All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session in the Improve Your Clients Live series. It's Intuit's Business Builder series. And today's session, we're going to talk about implementing cash flow management to increase profitability. My name is Jeff Borschowa. I'm going to give you a little overview, and I don't want to waste any time. We'll jump right in. I am an author and a coach to the accounting profession, and I've dedicated my career to helping professionals increase their profitability. I love to work with accountants and bookkeepers alike, and my current obsession, which I will share with you today, is how we can offer cash flow management as a service to our clients. And interestingly enough, and this is a great paradigm shift, if we offer cash flow to our clients, help them improve their cash flow, selfishly it helps us improve our cash flow. So if you have any questions, I welcome them. We'll try and address them right at the end. I won't get to them as we go. Just if you could type in your questions as you think of them, I'll make sure we leave about 10 minutes at the end to answer them. And you can either type it into the question box or the chat box on the side. And if there's follow-up questions, I will share my email address, and you can definitely reach out to me after the fact. Okay. So the first thing, and a lot of my coaching clients, they hate it when I do this, but I always start with why. And personally, the reason I start with why, and I believe that why is important, this is setting the tone and setting your expectations so that you know exactly what your intentions are and why you're doing it. The bigger question I have about cash flow is why not? And when it comes to cash flow, I have a lot of conversations with small business owners, and their biggest complaint is that they're willing and able to pay for advice, but they get really frustrated when their accountant or their bookkeeper isn't willing or able to provide the advice. So I want to stress to everybody on today's call, and if you agree with me, please raise your hand just so I can see how many people agree, or just type in the chat. Clients desperately want and value this advice. So if you believe that and you're open to that, just type in yes or raise your hand. If you disagree with me, and I'm open to disagreement, I'd love to hear in the comments why you don't believe that statement to be true. So let's make this engaging and interactive. Another reason I believe that cash flow management is critical is that it differentiates your firm from your competitors. I've talked to a lot of accountants, literally thousands over the years, and very few actually deliberately offer cash flow management as a paid service. Unfortunately, even fewer think it's valuable, and then there's a few that actually do it, but they give it away for free because they don't see the value of it. So it's a very interesting thing. I personally believe it is something that people demand. Why shouldn't we offer it? Now, the other two reasons are about us. I like to think of cash flow management as the introduction to advisory services, and what we can do, usually, and what we'll talk about on today's call, we identify cash flow issues. The next step is helping our clients fix them. So we'll want to make sure we're looking at this as a holistic thing. Believe it or not, I see cash flow conversations as a marketing tool for our firm. Typically, when I talk to clients, there is questions such as, how do I improve cash flow? How do I improve my receivables? How do I manage payables? How do I manage inventory? So all of those can be add-on advisory services. Again, not saying everybody wants to get into that, but at a minimum, we all know how to do cash flow conversations, and I promise you I'll make that very clear by the end. We should be offering those so that our clients get it and they're getting the value and advice that they want. The last comment I have is it's profitable and interesting work. Typically, I'm seeing accountants who, for year ends are charging in the 2,000 to 3,000 range. A lot of these are turning their clients into cash flow clients, and they're charging them somewhere. The best ones are charging around 1,000 a month. The worst case, I'm seeing some that are charging 2,000 a quarter. So you can still get your compliance fee, but adding on top of that, or your bookkeeping fee, but adding on top of that, you can sometimes increase your fees from a client by 4 to 5 times. And from my point of view, at least, I find cash flow to be a very interesting conversation. It's far more interesting work. Staff like it, I like it, so we can enjoy our day-to-day lives better. And honestly, if you can get more profitable work, you can have the same revenues, the same profit with fewer clients, which means in an interesting sense, less hours worked for you. So we're going to talk about the basics of cash flow, and I, in my experience, can teach cash flow all you need to know in about 5 minutes. And the reason I say that is we already know these things. We just need to know that we know it. We need to be reminded of it. And we need a framework around what to do in terms of how we approach things. Okay, so let's jump right in. And I'm going to say something that is blatantly obvious, but I want it to sink in because it's so obvious nobody actually thinks about it. Most clients do not actively manage their cash flow. I would argue most accountants, most bookkeepers do not actively manage their cash flow. So most business owners aren't thinking about cash flow in a proactive, forward-looking way. They're looking backwards, filing taxes, things like that. What we want to do is to be very clear that we should be looking forward in our business and managing it deliberately. And the reason I want to make that statement so clear is if clients are not managing their cash flow, how are they running their businesses? So I'm going to argue that the onus is on us as accounting professionals. We need to be the ones who are offering this advice to our clients. If we're not offering it, they're not getting it from anywhere. The other thing I want to say is because there's not a lot of people out there doing it, even if we do it at a basic level, we're giving our clients way more value, way more information than they had before. So one of the things I like to do, and here is my 5-minute everything you need to know about cash flow theory. I take last year's income statement and I pull down the report, whether it's in QBO or QuickBooks Desktop. I pull down the report where it shows income month to month, and I export that to Excel. And what I do is I take last year's numbers, I take the header on it, and I create, instead of income statement 2017, I will create a very fancy document and I call it Budget 2018. Now, the sharper among you will say, well, that's not really a budget, that's just last year's numbers with a budget title on it. Exactly. This is by far a better budget than what most clients have at this moment, because at least they can look at it and say, okay, last year we had some trends, our sales were up in one month, down in another month, our costs were up. We can look at that very clearly, and the budget itself, it's just a piece of paper, it's just a spreadsheet. You can give it to them either digitally or physically. There's no real value in the budget itself other than they don't probably have one at this point. So what they then can do, and the great thing about this is we can start this today. It literally takes us 5 minutes. Again, you're not going to charge thousands of dollars for this. This is something I would normally do for free and send it out by email, or have a conversation with them face to face. The point of this budget is not that these numbers are somehow relevant. The point of the budget is you want to get them to have a conversation about it. So your value is not in printing off this budget. Your value is asking them questions. And again, in Excel, you can manipulate a lot of data. There's wonderful tools to look at it. But what you want to identify wherever possible is trends in the data. So, if you can do it, with a lot of my clients, what I used to do, I would pull off a 3-year income statement, and what I would look at is, are there trends in terms of seasonality of income? Are there trends in terms of when expenses are high, low? Are there shortfalls? Are there issues? And basically looking at things to see, can you identify how revenue drives expenses, or are the expenses independent of revenue? But really, it's about looking at the data and asking some key questions. So what is going on in the data? So honestly, I spend about an hour on this with the client. I sit down with them, I go through, and we make sure we're bringing some value to the conversation. Another piece, I really like to share a couple of liquidity ratios or profitability ratios. So you can pull those offline, but I do a little bit of analysis and show them month to month what their trends are. So it's really easy, basic. We can create a template for it, and we do it for every client that we think would be a fit, and we'll talk about fit in a subsequent section. But basically, what we want to do is focus on adding value in the conversation. And a lot of accountants and bookkeepers say, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, I don't want to be held accountable. I want to really challenge you. This is not necessarily, especially the first conversation, it's not necessarily one where you have to know all of the answers. So you're not looking at being the one who knows everything. A lot of this is asking them questions. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? What's going on here? Can we do this differently? Can we do that differently? So you're really, your value is in asking questions. I promise you, your clients know how to run their business on a day-to-day for the most part. What they don't know how to do is examine it and ask questions. So if any of you have ever done analytical review, analyzing the financials, those numbers are incredibly valuable. So have that conversation, and I'll talk later about a tool that you can use to have that conversation. But for now, I really suggest just doing it basic in Excel so that you can have that conversation. And the goal of this first setting is to get the conversation started, and if you can identify some action items, make some recommendations of how they can improve cash flow. For example, you could recommend that they follow up on receivables. If you notice the age of receivables is over 60 days. You could recommend managing payables if they've got sort of some that are due tomorrow, some that are due 3 months from now, prioritizing payments, things like that. Just looking at credit facilities, lending facilities, what sort of covenants do they have. So basically, this is the basic cash flow. And again, this doesn't meet textbook definitions of budgeting. It's just very simple, very basic. But the value, and I promise you, there's enormous value in the client's eyes, is having that pricing, that budgeting conversation so that they know exactly what to expect. Okay? And I see we've got some questions building up. We'll make sure they're all answered at the end, but keep typing away. Thank you. And the key to this conversation is having some action items that you would suggest they look at. Now, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It can be little things like, managing line of credit, managing overdraft, reducing bank charges. Think about, in this initial conversation, 3 or 4 things that you can send them away with, and suggest that we meet quarterly going forward in order to review this. Okay, so this is the basic parameter, and again, I oversimplify because I just want to make sure everybody gets the basics of this. If there's enough interest, I'm happy to do some more in-depth on this. Just let Intuit or myself know. But the idea is we want to get our clients talking about their cash flow and managing it proactively. Time and time again, I've had people approach me and they're desperate, they're panicky, and the conversation usually starts with, we're short, we're not going to be able to make payroll tomorrow, what do we do? Now, the reality is there's nothing to do at that point but panic, and hopefully they've got some options. Personally, and from a client point of view as well, I would rather we identify 30, 60, 90 days out that there's going to be a cash crunch, and we make sure the client is aware of that. So there's incredible value in being proactive, and you can use budgeting features in the accounting software to make sure you're tracking and measuring things. What you can do over time, so this is sort of the free introduction. Over time, you can then talk to them about doing this for them and giving them more value and more coverage with more support. So this is where we get into how we price cash flow. And I'm a big fan of having 3 options for people. And typically, I don't get really too creative, but what I usually look at is having 3 scenarios. I'm really creative with my names: bronze, silver, and gold. So I'll use those names for today, and we'll talk about some parameters in the next slide. But the idea behind pricing packages and having multiple options, some people are price sensitive and they want the cheapest possible option. So we want to have a bronze package for those people. That should be our bare minimum. Okay, so bronze is our bare minimum. Really, the goal should be, why would we take them? Why would we take them on if they're below a certain price? So that's our minimum. The next option is silver, and a certain amount of people, they want safety, they'll default to the middle of the road package. So the vast majority, statistics vary, but somewhere 80–85% of your people will take your silver package. So this should be the one that you're comfortable offering. It's the best value to everyone, and you want to make sure that everybody is happy with it. So it's the pricing package that you expect to deliver. Again, we'll talk about the differences between these. And then the premium package is sort of that number that you would be ecstatic and really thrilled, and you'd call home and tell your spouse about if you got somebody signed up at it. And the reason we have this premium gold package, certain people are elite and they want the most expensive because to them price is a representation of value. So some people will pay for the top package regardless of what you charge. So you want to have that option available to them. So ultimately, the bronze package, those should be your starter clients, and your goal should be to promote them from bronze into silver. Initially, I would expect that you'd want, probably as few as possible in the bronze, but realistically, most of your clients should and will start in bronze, and then as you develop confidence, you'll upgrade them to the silver. Okay, I'm seeing some comments about sound quality. Is it better now? Okay, so just let me know if it's better. There's nothing on my end indicating a problem, so let me know. Once we have our packages, so we'll create the parameters, and the reason we have parameters is when we sit down with people, we're getting a chance to chat with them. Okay, so just in the chat box, if you guys could let me know how the sound is, because I have one that's saying it's cutting out. Okay, so it looks like everybody is fine. Rebecca, maybe there's something on your end. If there is an issue, just let me know. Okay. Okay, perfect. So the key to this when we set the package is we want to base it on clients' perceived value. And this is absolutely critical. We can't value this based on how much time it takes us, how much effort we put into it. Cash flow management, in my opinion, and I suggest this for everybody, is either value pricing or fixed price. It should never be hourly, because the reality is you're going to do well with it, but the better you are, the faster you are, it will take very little time. But I want to stress that you're making incredible strides to helping your clients, and they will deeply value what you do. If you price it too cheaply, interestingly enough, they're not going to value the advice you give. And so your job is to get past whatever hangups you have about hourly versus value. And the key is we have the conversation up front. We let them pick the package. They know what the cost is going to be. So we're not worrying about how many hours it takes and justifying an hourly fee. We're offering them value. They're going to be excited about this. And when I work with coaching clients, a lot of them are really reluctant. When they start having these conversations, they shift immediately to either fixed price agreements or into value pricing. So I just want you to keep that in mind. We couldn't possibly cover that level of theory today, but we will definitely at least introduce it. And I do want to stress that today is about introducing the concept, getting you thinking about it so that you can do more and work on building this. Okay, so we will get to questions about 10.2, and we're on track for that. So when it comes to value pricing or pricing, fixed pricing, when it comes to the cash flow, there's a few variables that we would consider when it comes to how we set our price. And this is entirely arbitrary, but a lot of my clients, they're using roughly $100 a month for the bronze, somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 a quarter for silver, and for annual, they're looking at 15,000 to 20,000 for the year for the gold membership. So a lot of that is variable, and you can mix and match in this. We'll talk about a couple of tools to manage this in a minute. But the biggest thing that impacts the value is how frequently we're reviewing this data. So with a bronze, for example, I would do a 1 year fixed budget. We meet once a year and we update it, and maybe it's a short hour-long meeting. So we're not putting a lot of effort into it. They're getting just enough value that they see the value. Our goal again is to upsell them so that we get them into the silver package. And if anybody objects to upselling as a term, we're in a profession where we work long and hard hours. If we can do more for fewer clients, that's the easiest way where we can take control of our lives and work less. So for the silver, for example, I would maybe meet with them quarterly and maybe for an hour each quarter. With the gold premium package, I would meet with them maybe monthly for an hour to a month, depending on their needs. So you can really differentiate your packages based on frequency and length. The other thing, I personally don't like 5-year, 10-year budgets. I think they're meaningless. They're throw something at the wall and hope it sticks. I personally like quarterly or annual budget. At best, we can only guess beyond a year. So for the bronze, usually what I'll do is a fixed budget where they get 12 months of data. We'll update it once a year. With the silver package, I might offer them a quarterly fixed budget where we update it once a quarter, and we always have fresh data for the next 90 days. For the premium, I would suggest something like a rolling 30-day budget. So every 30 days we update, and maybe we go out for the next quarter. So we always have 90 days of data projected forward. Financial ratio analysis, I use this as a differentiator. So for my bronze, I might analyze a couple of financial ratios, maybe their gross margin, their net income, something like that. For silver, I would maybe give them a choice of 10 or so that they could review. And then for the gold, I would give them more comprehensive analysis. And again, there are a lot of tools that will do this. If you just Google financial ratio analysis, you'll get a lot of results. There's a lot of templates out there. The next thing is business complexity. If a business is very simple, they're going to be a bronze by default, probably no need for silver or gold. The more complex they are, and complexity involves things like size, obviously, product lines, income, inventory levels, accounts receivable, payable, debt. So the more complicated they are, the more advice they need, the more value you can offer. Therefore, you ultimately want to make sure you've got some complex clients so that you can offer this service. Another value add and a differentiator is key performance indicators. With bronze, I might give them 2 or 3 that they can monitor themselves. With silver, I would probably offer a few more, help them create the key performance indicators and maybe help them monitor and track them. And then for the gold package, I would offer them, as many as they think is reasonable, probably 10 to 20, and we monitor, track, and we report to management on that success. So again, the level of involvement and commitment, bronze is pretty simple. Gold, think of it as a white glove concierge service where we're helping them very specifically. The next thing, if they want or need this, and again, you're not going to see this in bronze, but maybe in silver or gold, if they have multiple product lines, you can take some of this ratio analysis right into the individual products. So which one's more profitable, which one has better cash flow prospects, things like that. Are you pricing it right? And then for strategy review, I usually reserve that for my gold clients. And what we do is we meet once a year, spend 2 or 3 hours thinking about an action plan for the next year. And basically it's sort of that renewal time where we revisit tax planning, we revisit cash flow, we update the budget, and we just look at where does the company going to go. And again, I want to stress we don't need to know the answers, we just need to ask questions. So this isn't about us knowing everything, it's about us offering some questions. And then the last thing I use, you can be creative. These are not an exhaustive list, but these are just some examples that me and my coaching clients have used successfully. The last area is a combination of email and phone support. So for the bronze people, I might offer them email support only. So if they have questions, they can email me. We'll deal with so many questions in a period for a fixed fee. For the silver, maybe you offer email and phone support. And then for the gold, you can offer premier priority support. So maybe you'll guarantee response times to emails within 6 hours, guaranteed phone response within the day, things like that. So think about where you can add some value and how you can offer it to the clients. Okay, I'm going to provide some resources, and if anyone has any questions, happy to answer. So these are my 4 must-haves, and the reason I have them up there, I think we promised you we'd talk about 1 or 2. QuickBooks Online, to me, is the platform that helps us get started. If you're a diehard desktop user, all is not lost. It just means you're going to do a lot of stuff manually, and you better be very, very comfortable with Excel. So with desktop, you need to export to Excel. You need to do all of this data manipulation right within Excel. With the QuickBooks Online version, a lot of the data integrates directly with the other programs. In today's case, we're going to talk about Fathom. But what it does, it actually allows you to quickly handle a lot of this volume, a lot of this calculation very simply, with QuickBooks being the hub, Fathom being the processing power. So we'll talk about Fathom in a little bit. Practice Ignition, to me, it's probably one of the most exciting tools I've seen in the profession in a long time. And what I like about it is its ability to manage your client engagement lifecycle. So things like putting together a nice little proposal, sending it out to the client, pre-agreeing to the terms, so having an initial upfront conversation, telling them what you're going to deliver, laying out what you need from them, what they can expect from you, what the prices are, when things will be paid, and it'll actually handle the recurring payments on those accounts for you. So you can set it up, use credit card to make the payments happen, but automatically it's integrated with QBO, QuickBooks Online, so you have that record of invoicing and payments. But also the most important piece is dealing with scope creep. So if the client suddenly comes to you and says, I know I'm a bronze client, but I need you to do this for me, you can specifically have that conversation, and you can create a change order, and that allows you to show the client, here's your regular fee, here's the change, but you have that conversation before you do the work so that you know that you're going to get paid for it. A lot of accountants and bookkeepers, they'll do a lot of work, they get excited, they'll go back to the client and say, hey, aren't you proud? Look, I did this for you. And the client will say, well, I really can't afford to. I wish you would have told me beforehand. So this is a valuable, valuable tool, incredibly important. I strongly recommend it. Okay, now Fathom, this is a very exciting tool, and there's a few of them. But Fathom is one that we can share, and basically what it does, it offers some cash flow and some reporting options that just don't exist in basic QuickBooks. So Fathom as a tool, it adds some financial intelligence, management reporting, and it's really actually pretty reasonable. Pricing on it ranges from $14 if you have more than 20 clients, to $14 a company per month, and one-off it's $39 per company per month. What Fathom does, and this is where it gets really exciting, is it exports data right from within QuickBooks Online, and it gives you some immediate financial analysis, reports, there's benchmarking, and you can do some consolidation. So it's really management reporting on steroids. And again, it takes that basic boring data within the bookkeeping world, it's debits and credits, and it takes that data and it helps you tell the story of the business and share that story with the client. So yes, I know all of you know Excel, and I know all of you can do this in Excel, but what Fathom does is it takes away all of that manual processing time, checking formulas, and it just gives you simple graphs and charts that you can share with your share in conversations with your client. Now, the last tool is called cloud pricing, and I personally think I was literally speechless when I saw it. I think this is going to be the tipping point, and I believe it's going to revolutionize the bookkeeping and accounting world because it gives us a practical tool to really assess the value of our services from a client point of view. So you create your little templates and your menu of services, and you put these variables in, and based on those variables, you have a conversation with the client, and what it does, it will create 3 pricing packages for the client based on their preferences. So what that does, if you come to a client and you say the price is $1,000, the client's decision is binary. They either say yes or no to that decision. If they say no, the conversation ends. You might be a little bit embarrassed, but you go back and you hope that you get the next one. If they say yes, great, you can start the work. With the 3 pricing packages, the clients can look at it, and because they've selected the parameters, they personally have some buy-in to the pricing, and instead of saying yes or no, they're going to say, that's a little outside of my budget. Could we find a way to reduce it? Or I like the price of that, but I really want this service. How can we make it so that I can afford that service? And what you do then is you can go back and you change these variables up or down to improve the price. And because the client's vested in it, they're not going to say no to you. They're going to negotiate till they get to the one price that they can afford and that adds the value to them. Interestingly, we see, and I've worked with a few firms that are using it, on average they're charging 2 to 3 times more by using the software than they do if they price it by themselves without really getting into the details. Okay. Now, this is the fun part for me, and so I'm going to cover client selection. And my goal for cash flow, and when I work with my coaching clients, the first thing we do is we look within our own client base, because that's where a lot of our profit and potential is hiding. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we identify our own clients that help us, that have need of this, so that we can help them. And immediately, from a couple of perspectives, we can offer this to somebody that we know and somebody who already likes us and trusts us. But then the idea is, once we're comfortable with it, we can then go on and offer it to our potential clients. So we want to practice that we want to practice on people we know. So this is literally the hidden gems. I tell my coaching clients this is like going through the cushions on your couch and finding $100 bill. There is a lot of money to be made, and I would suspect most of you are here because you'd like to work more, or sorry, work less and increase your fees. So there's a lot of money to be made within our existing client base. And one thing I will caution everybody I work with, when I first have this conversation, they say, no, not me. My clients don't need cash flow, or my clients can't afford this. Um, Let the clients decide rather than you making that decision for them. I've worked with a few clients in my day where maybe they're making 150,000 a year, and with help and some coaching and some guidance, they grew to $1, $2, $3 million companies. So you never know who's looking to grow. And again, it's a nice low cost offering to have that first conversation. So what I like to do, I look at their complexity first. I want to make sure that they've got either receivables, payables, inventory, staff, maybe job costing. They don't have to have it all, but at least one or two of those things. And the reason is these are sort of complex levers that we can pull and manipulate and get results on. Receivables is probably my favorite area because it's usually low-hanging fruit. Very few businesses actively track and monitor their receivables. So if we just get them doing things like invoicing faster, following up on past due bills, sending outstanding debts to collection, we can really improve cash flow very quickly. I had one client, they were electrical company, and it took them, they had a manual paper system with little chits that they had to write out, which the field workers would drop off whenever they felt like it. It would often take 30, 60 days to get the bill out to the client. By 30, 60 days after the service is rendered, the client's long forgotten the excitement of, my hallway was dark and now I can see. So it would take 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. What we did, a little simple thing, we implemented a point of sale solution where at the door, when they showed up for the appointment, they did the work, they gave a tablet to the client signed off, paid their credit card on the spot. So we went from sometimes it was 150 days receivable, we literally within a 2-week period got them down to zero. So they literally had no receivables, amazing impact on cash flow, and very little effort on my part. Revenue, again, I don't bias, and I don't want you to say don't do it because they're under this, but typically I find if they're less than 500,000, they have a job and they're trying to work hard, and their goal is to minimize costs and improve their revenue. So they're really not focused on building a business. Anyone over 500,000 have gone through some of those growing pains. Odds are they're starting to scale, and maybe they're adding staff. So my assumption, and if you're just looking at your client base and you want to test this, my assumption is start with those over 500,000. I really, just to get started, pick 2 or 3. If you don't have any over 500,000, pick your top 3 highest income clients and have the conversation. Now, another key factor, they have to have a strong desire to improve. If they're happy the way they are, they're a solo entrepreneur doing their thing, you can't improve them no matter what. So don't bother. If they say we want help, we want to learn, we want to grow, that's the kind of people that you want to work with. Another one, if you have a client who's calling you frequently with cash flow issues, we bought this equipment, we can't make payroll, those are the kind of clients that need it, whether they have the money for it or not. So you can argue that their very survival depends on solving these cash flow issues. The other thing I like to look for, I'm a niche person, so I want to focus on an industry. If I have some special skills in an industry, I would love to work with more people in that industry so that I can leverage those skills further. For your benefit, it's far more efficient if, for example, you do cash flow for 10 electrical companies or electricians because you know their industries, you know their ratios, their key performance indicators. You can give them more solid advice than if you had 10 clients, each in a different industry. So that's my approach. And so with my coaching clients, the homework I give them is go through your current client base and have that initial budget conversation with at least 3 of them. Again, just say to them your premise for the meeting is we're offering cash flow management as a service to our clients. We'd like to sit down with you. We'd like to discuss your needs, your wants, how we can help you. There's no obligation. We're going to do this initial conversation at no charge. Welcome, come on in. And again, go through their stuff and ask them questions about how budgets, how expenses tie to revenue, etc. Now, the magic for growth, and people think that there should be a really complicated, different formula, but the magic is once you get comfortable with this with your internal clients, you can start to apply this as a marketing tool and a sales tool to bring in external clients. And we'll talk about this in the context of promotion and LinkedIn and social media and all that. But the goal is if you go to market and you know exactly who you want to reach and what your message is, you can say to the market, I am looking for people with these qualities exactly like we would do internally, but we state to the market, this is what we're looking to do, this is who we're looking to serve. If you're one of these, please call us and we'll have a conversation about your cash flow. Again, I want to stress very few accountants out there are doing this, so even if you do it adequately or okay or barely adequately, you're still offering them something better than what they would have had before. So it will be something unique. Now, I'm just curious if you guys could just type in the chat box, not the question box, but the chat box, what social media, if any, you use to promote your services. I will give you my top ones, and I will also say that specifically it depends which industry you're focused on, and knowing who you want to serve, you're going to target your message to the appropriate place where they are. So LinkedIn is traditionally the most common for business. That's where most business owners are. So I recommend LinkedIn. And in order to promote using LinkedIn, it's really simple. You can write a blog or a journal or an article on cash flow management. People love lists, so top 5 reasons businesses should manage cash flow, top 7 issues to avoid in cash flow management. But put out some content, and you don't have to write it yourself. You can hire local journalist students, English majors, there's people online, but just share some content about your views on cash view. You can do that in LinkedIn. I personally like YouTube, so one of the things I do with my coaching clients, let's create a video on how to update that static 12-month budget that we gave you so you can, as a business owner, monitor yourself month to month. A lot of people say, oh, that takes business away from me. Not really. What it does is it shows that you're an expert. They will try it themselves, and when they get frustrated, they will call you and say, hey, help me out with this. So YouTube is a great place to go. Facebook, again, if you've got a business page, I would have conversations on Facebook about cash flow management, issues in cash flow, tips on cash flow. Again, sharing some information so that when people need an expert, they will remember you and come back to you. The thing about all social media is it's very easy for people to share. So you can reach people that you wouldn't even expect to by posting and sharing generously on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn. Twitter is my least favorite of the group, and it's really because you don't have a much space to make a point, but it's a good place to promote articles that you have on LinkedIn, videos you have on YouTube, posts on Facebook. So if you're like most accountants and bookkeepers and pressed for time, pick one where you know your audience is and get really good at that. If you want a more global strategy, I would use a combination of these four so that you can reach more people. Last two, I highly recommend attending networking events put on by local chamber of commerce, economic development office. If you go to meetup.com, you can find networking events in your business area or geographic area, and it's just meet, M-E-E-T, up.com. So it's a good way to go meet some people, get to know other people in the industry, talk to business owners. And if you can say, I offer cash flow management, it's a differentiator. People will want to talk to you. The last thing I highly recommend, educational events, whether it's live and you have people come into your office or a webinar type setting. Educational events, you can teach people, again, the basics of budgeting, let them try it and do it themselves. When they get frustrated or annoyed, they will come back to you. So think of it as, instead of spending money on marketing, I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I used to do a monthly lunch and learn session, cost me a few dollars every month for sandwiches, but typically the way we ran our educational events, we would make them free to our clients, and we'd cap it, if our capacity was 20, we'd cap it at the first 10 clients that had committed, they got to come, and the condition we had was they had to invite a business colleague or acquaintance. So typically we'd get 10 of our clients in, and we get 10 new prospects at each session. So instead of me calling and begging for projects and work, these people would come to the events, and usually we'd be able to turn at least 7 or 8 out of 10 into new clients. So this is cash flow, and it's a great opportunity to improve your business. I highly recommend that you explore the subject a little bit further. If anyone is interested, I do have more in-depth materials on this. Just feel free to email me, jeff@dreampractice.ca, and I will put that in the chat again. And I will now take any and all questions, preferably about cash flow, but I work with accountants, bookkeepers, so anything that's relevant to the group today. And if you prefer and you want to be unmuted, you can just raise your hand and you can ask me in person rather than typing. Now, Kim had a question or comment. It said, not sure, have not heard that from clients. Okay, so that was in regards to whether or not clients want cash flow. I promise you, if you start talking about cash flow, clients get very, very excited. Okay, can a bookkeeper provide this information as well if they're not accountants? Absolutely. I know Diane Mueller at the IPBC is leading a charge for this. Accountants will tell bookkeepers very plainly and often very rudely that this is our space, leave it alone. Interestingly enough, they want to protect this no man's land, and then they ignore it. So my advice to bookkeepers, if you want good relationships with your clients, start having these conversations. My advice to accountants, if you're not having these conversations, you should be. So I believe this is how we differentiate ourselves. There's all kinds of horror stories about, the profession disappearing, the need for bookkeepers is disappearing, need for accountants is going to be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence. Cash flow and other advisory services, this is the professional judgment, the people skills area where we can make a lot of money and we can really impact our clients and help them improve their lives. So I strongly recommend considering this before the world recognizes that we can do a lot of this with computers. So, okay. Now, one had a question about fixed pricing model and wants to know if I can have a conversation. Absolutely. Just send me an email. We'll connect. Okay. And it looks to me okay. So if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer. Okay. Now, one comment was the clients with cash flow problems are the only ones willing to pay for help. Absolutely, they are the most motivated. And I don't know if Intuit's going to make these recordings available. I believe if you contact your business development manager, they will have recording. I personally don't have any control over that. Now, for the admin people, will we be offering a copy of the slides? So if you can just answer that, I'll just keep going through the questions. Okay. Okay, now one question was, I'm just starting out, would it be better to get a few clients? My advice would be start having the cash flow conversation now and get in the habit of that. So you don't want to miss out on that revenue stream. Honestly, if you're starting out and you start offering cash flow, you're going to grow a lot quicker and you're not going to work nearly as hard as if you focused on just day-to-day bookkeeping. Okay. Somebody asked about my email. I've pasted that in the chat box. Okay. So lots of questions about the slides. After the webinar, they're going to share more information. We don't know for sure if they're going to use it. There is a white paper that's available, but we'll get to that. So let me just get through more questions. Okay, so more information would be great. Okay, looks like that's all of the questions. So I will be respectful of everyone's time. If you've got more questions or comments, I'm happy to share them. If that's it, I will wind up and I'll do some parting comments. Like I said, you've registered for the webinar. Intuit's got your details, so we'll be following up with attendees. And again, if you want to have a follow-up conversation, Jeff at dreampractice.ca. And again, no obligation. I'm not looking to sell you anything. My goal is just to make sure people are understanding the importance of cash flow and offering it to their clients. So thank you to everyone for participating, and I hope you all got some value out of this. And again, feel free to follow up with me. Now, one thing I do want to remind people of, the next webinar is called Setting Your Clients Up for Success. It will be hosted next Thursday, October 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can register by going to the link. This is bit.ly. I'm going to see if I can copy and paste that for you. It just seems very, very mean to make people try and write that down. There we go. So if there's no questions, thank you all for your time. And obviously, I'd like to thank Intuit for putting this together and having everybody out. Best of luck with your growth, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.